Predators. I love fishing for them, and one of those predators is the freshwater one called the pike. I love pike fishing. Now you can catch pike on static dead baits, just ledgering, watching a pair of bobbins. Effective, especially for big ones. I've done it for many years, but not for me now. I like to be mobile, I like to be moving. It can be on a river, it can be on a lake. Wherever I go pike fishing, I want to be mobile. It could be on a bike, like our pike fishing film, Pike on a Bike, on our sister show here, the Totally Awesome Outdoor Show. Or it can be on what we call Shanks's pony, which is your legs. Or you can go pike fishing with one of these things. That's right, you can get yourself a boat and you can still be mobile. You don't have to anchor in one spot. And my method is called float trolling, which I'm going to be using. And with a boat this size, what's this one? This is a huge boat here from Graeme Pullen. You can see the size of it, really nice big boat. What I'm going to be doing is telling you how to tackle up, to rig up for this method I call float trolling. I've done it in Ireland, it's really successful. Now, I'm not really a lover of long rods, and I'm going to be using 9-10 foot ones. I've got a lure rod, 2 pound test curve. I've got an old Master Pike 2 here. But if you can use a 12 foot rod or a pair of 12 foot pike rods, not those big 3 pound test curve overkill things, just something reasonable, you know, a couple of pound test curve, you can fish those 2 rods as sort of outriggers, and I'll show you when I get set up out there. But first I'm going to give you a guide roughly how I rig up. So, fixed spool reel, okay. You can use multipliers for this as well, because you're not casting, you're feeding the line back straight off the line as you're rowing along. So your fixed spool reel, I've got 15 pound line on there. I'm not going to mess around. That's Sufix, I think they call it. Now, float, not those big fishing gazette ones. You don't want one of those. You want something like this, just a regular, nice slim line pike float. Okay, barrel swivel here, and my usual pike trace, which is 40 pound wire, stainless cable wire. I've got a couple of shot I normally put on, but I've got one at the moment here just to rig out with. A single holding hook, which is a carp hook with a barb on. And here I've taken the barb off of this. This is a VB doubled hook, which goes into the bait. You know, just nicks it in there. I'll show you that in a second anyway. So that's it. Now, the main point is, you would normally, you can see this, you'd have your bait down the bottom down here, just on the hook there. You'd have your bait there, and you would suspend it from the float like this. Now, let's say I'm up here at Blenheim Palace Lake here in Oxford. It's pretty deep, so it's 12, 15 feet in places. So if I set this for just off the bottom, let's say it's 12 feet deep, I'm going to put it 2 feet off the bottom. I want it just yay big off the bottom. So the bait is coming along. Two things happen. As you're rowing along, that bait is going to swing up at an angle. So you might set it at 12 feet, 10 feet, whatever you want, 8 feet, but it's going to swing up, and it probably is no more than 50% of the depth that you set it at, because you're going to, depending on how fast you're going to row, it's going to plane it all up. So where you would normally have a shot, or you can have a stop knot just up here. Most people use stop knots, or those rubber stop knots you can get now, float stop. That stops here. As you're rowing along, it accentuates it, because the pressure of the flow from rowing is going to slide this all the way back, right till it hits a swivel there. And then, of course, well, 18-inch trace, I'm dragging all this bait along 18 inches below the surface. So what I do, I reverse it, and this is just something I do myself. If it's 10 feet deep, I want it to stay at 10 feet. I slightly overweight the float, just very, very slightly, just so it's really pipped right down. And then you want to take your shot. I'm going to pinch this one off if I can. Use a knot as well. Use a sliding knot. I'm doing this just to show you can use a rubber stopper. Now that seems really weird, doesn't it? Underneath the float. But what happens is, you set this at just over your depth, let's say 8 feet, 10 feet, whatever it is. And then when the float is being pulled along, it slides down like this, comes up against the stop, and that will stop that float sliding right down. Because if you don't use a float, the bait's going to sink down too deep, and you'll be fishing it too close to the boat. This way, the float, you can run it back 20, 30, 40 yards back, sometimes I put it, to get it away from the boat. Because what I think happens is, just about to get bombarded by pheasants at 40 miles an hour. What I think happens is, if you're in shallower water, you row over a pike, you're going to spook him. I think they've got very short-term memory, and in 20, 30 feet, he's settled down. Well, if my bait is 40 feet back, by the time he's settled down, he's forgotten, his memory lapse has gone, he's forgotten about the boat going over him, and then he can see my bait right down the back, and he'll flash up and grab it. I've had this happen in Ireland so many times, and on some big waters in England as well. So that's what I do. Shot or knot or rubber stop at the bottom of the float. That's your depth stop instead of the top. And then we're going to go out and I'm going to show you how you can work two rods by just using the oars on the boat. It's a good tip and you can cover some ground. Okay, I'm going to be using the good old, chuck that one in, tried and tested sprats. So you can use these straight out the freezer, no problem. They're very narrow, they flash well. I've also got something you don't see very often, whiting, small whiting, and I like using those because they got tough jaws, lovely and soft and tough. And of course the pike fisherman's good standby of a massive mackerel caught by my good self. So just looking at the sprat, here we go. I've got one shot on it, but I would normally say fish it maybe two. It's got to go through the throat latch, get through there and pop on just a bait holding hook there in the back, so it's just holding like this. You want everything but that straighter. You want it all as straight as you can possibly get it. You do not want it kinked like this because it'll just rotate and spin. It will not look natural at all. Now, I'm going to put that on here. I'm going to put the whiting on this one just so I can show you this. And then I'll be using something totally different, as they say in the cookery programs. I'll be using a head cam and keeping the main camera behind me. So, there's the whiting ready to go. I love it. And I'll just set these out shallow and you can see with the head cam, hopefully you'll be able to see how it all works. Right, I've got my trusty head cam all geared up here ready to go. Just get it switched on. That's it, we're away. And I'll show you how to set up. Mainly get the boat going in a straight line and you start feeding the line over one at a time. You want to fish one far bait and one sort of medium bait. Don't fish them parallel because when you go to turn, they'll cross and spin. Fish one long and one short. We just get a little bit of momentum going first. Only needs a very, very small amount. No casting involved at all. Now, just level it up. I just drop the sprat over the stern, open the bail arm like this, and then I'm rowing away from that bait. I put the rod down at an angle. I'm going to row that one back. Probably row it back about 30 yards to show you. And the line will be spilling off this ball down here. Then, while that one's still running out, take my trusty whiting. There he goes, all ready to go. There he is, and over the side, followed by the float. It sinks down. I put it the opposite direction with the bail arm open so they can take line off. And I'm going to row them both away now. Now just leave them spaced apart. Away we go. When I get them about, say, 30 and 50 yards back, all I do then is two ways of doing this. Flip it shut if you've got a bait runner or a strike drag. Just keep it so it's loose. They can take drag off, just like that. Or if you've got a standard fixed spool reel, just back the drag off and you'll see you've got plenty of time to grab it if a fish gets hold. And I put both of them crossways like two outriggers. Now, there is another way. If you wanted to, you could use a run clip. I'll show you how those work. Okay, now, these little thing here, this one there, that's a run clip. And what you do is you stretch those over the foregrip, just like this. Get over. I'm assuming you can still buy these or similar in a tackle shop. So they sit just like this. Then you open the bail arm, take the line up into the run clip like this, and that way you can tighten the drag up, and then when the fish takes here, it pops it out, bang, and you can get a free take. I'll show you again. Just pop it in the line clip. Now you might find that's a little bit loose, so what you can do is put an elastic band around it, or indeed you can put an elastic band around here and tuck the line in there so it pulls this way. So you can do it pop like this, or just use it with the drag set light or the bait runner on, so they can take the line off under, and you don't lose the rod over the side, basically. Right, now let me show you the technique of working the rods using the boat and the oars. Now you can row along on a constant line, but your baits will be going through just planing, just planing at a constant speed. By alternating on the oars, you can speed up the outside one, and as you twist the boat, it turns and it makes the inside bait sink down, just like a fluttering bait. Then if you alternate it and do it the other way and spin the boat slightly the other way, of course it slows that bait down and speeds the other one up. So you can sort of walk those baits, speeding up on the outside, the inside one drops. Slack that one back, it speeds the other side up, the inside one drops. You can also do this right around snaggy areas, weed beds, any other features, and actually work those baits just by using your hands on the oars. Now if you just look at this rod on the left hand side, as I pull on the left, it pulls that line tight. Now look, when I spin it the other way, you actually see the line slacken off on that rod, and the right hand rod is the one that's going to pull tight. So I'm alternating, it falls slack there on the left, meanwhile the right hand one pulls tight. Now as I go on the left hand oar, look at the line come tight to the rod top, and that of course is causing and creating that movement to the bait, making it just rise and fall in the water. Pulls up tight, you'll see the line go right up tight against the shadow line. As soon as I back paddle, it puts a big bow of line on the water. That enables the bait to sink back down deep. That's when the trout, or anything really, whiting, mackerel, sprat, any sort of bait, is going to get you the strike, because it's going to be just as it moves up in the water, it rises up, or as it falls back. And of course what you're doing is working both rods at the same time, and by rowing you're still covering an area of water. I can pull right past snags, I can actually tow them right past snags, past features, alongside weed beds. You'd be surprised how accurate you can get, because you're not actually casting out there, you're fishing both rods equally. Now the way to try and judge exactly how fast you're going is to row and look at the bait first in the water before you really drop it back. I mean, I know the speeds, I've been doing it years, but you want it almost slower rather than faster. And what you're looking for is a tiny wake that's just coming off of that float, just a little V of a wake, and that tells you, it gives you your speed. It's like, I can't tell you, very slow walking speed, something like that. You're just moving the boat. Of course you can speed up, and then you can kill the speed a bit with the back paddle on the oars. That lets the bait sink down deeper. You want to speed up, let them sit for a minute, speed up 2 or 3 pulls, it'll sweep the baits up. And sometimes if I do that near a snag, overhanging branches, bushes, edges of weed beds, that actually pulls the bait up in the water and they'll grab it. So a couple of techniques there worth knowing as well. And this is the Pike angler's superb setting. Why would I not want to go pike fishing with a setting like this at Blenheim Palace Lake? It is an absolute burnished sheet of glass. And who's here? Mr. Kingfisher, of course. and the heron. Still an impressive bird, even though he eats all our fish. I really developed this technique for myself where I'm fishing alone on biggish waters, mostly in Ireland. I used to fish on my own, and of course there, you need to cover the water. You wouldn't probably know where the immediate hotspots are unless somebody told you, and nobody's really ever told me where the hotspots were. I've had to go and find them myself. So this technique I developed, I call it float trolling with a fixed float, and I've never seen anybody else using the boat like this to actually work the baits, and I believe I've probably got it from learning when I went big game fishing. You're thinking all the time how you're going to trick that marlin, how you're going to trick that shark into taking a dead bait. I mean, a lot of the time when you're big game fishing, you're using live bait, that's fine. Sometimes you have to use dead baits, that's all you can get, and you've got to add movement to them. And you can see here how I'm working the boat. Sometimes I'm pulling on both oars, that pulls both baits, and then I spin on one and reverse the oar on the other. That, as I said earlier, helps to twist that boat, which in turn puts pressure on alternate rods. You can rise and fall those baits just like you would be doing if you only had one rod, except I'm able to use two. You've seen how to do that float trolling, but should you want to move with a big bait and you don't want to do the range, you just want to do some drifting and some twitching, you might want to cast a big bait. And I'll give you a tip from big game fishing how to cast a big bait like this, because you don't want to bury the hooks in it and then you can't hook the pike. On the other hand, you don't exactly want to cast these big baits off because they're quite expensive to buy. This is the way we do it, big game fishing style, and it works for the pike. Okay, this is what we do. Get your mackerel, you want to suspend it, let's say horizontally like this. Get your crochet needle, push it through underneath the spine. It's got to go underneath the spine, and it's got a little notch in it, a crochet needle, just a little notch there. So you slide a loop over that, just like this. Under tension, pull it right through, pop it out the other side, just like this. And then all you do is a nice overhand knot, quite tight, and that supports all the pressure when you're casting. If you do it nice and tight like this, double overhand knot, snip it off, pike aren't going to be bothered. And then all you simply do is, you can use trebles or you can use singles, you go underneath there, roll it and go through that twice. I don't know if you saw that. Now all that tension, all that casting is now on the bend of that hook and in the whole body of that bait. That's not going to tear off. I can pull that really hard. So when you've got the hook in there, you've wrapped it around twice. It can be a single or a treble, doesn't make any difference. As you can see, that is now supported horizontally, and more important, you can cast pretty hard with that and it's not going to tear out of the nose of the fish. It's supported midway section, but it's got to go under the spine. Worth a try. And of course you can still, if you're float fishing that, give that float a tweak every now and then, and that'll hopefully induce a take. Simple, easy, but effective. So there you go. I hope that's given you a few tips on how to use a boat properly for float trolling. You could of course do this float trolling using an outboard motor or an electric motor, but you will not be able to twist the boat in different angles so well as you can with oars, or adjust the speed, or be so quiet. So there's some more tips for you. Don't forget to keep watching the Totally Awesome Fishing Show